My name is Lucas. I'm 39 years old, a staff sergeant in the Army. I've been deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan. The desert's a second home by now. But nothing, no mission, no firefight prepared me for the war I didn't see coming. It started with an email. I was 4 months into a 7-month deployment in Fallujah. Same dust, same routine. Wake up, patrol, debrief, sleep, repeat. I checked my inbox after my shift, expecting a quick message from home. Instead, I saw this subject line. Let's be mature about this. I knew something was wrong before I even opened it. The message was 3 sentences long. Cassandra, my wife of 11 years, said she'd filed for divorce. She'd moved out. And her boyfriend, Troy, was already living in our house in El Paso. That was it. No explanation, no apology. I closed the laptop, walked to the communal showers, and stood under the cold stream for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just went still. When I got back to my bunk, I typed a single word in response. Understood. And I hit send. Not out of weakness, not out of surrender, but because something inside me had gone very, very quiet. The signs were there. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. 6 months before deployment, things began to shift. Small things. Cassandra stopped asking about my day. She worked longer hours at the dental office, but never seemed tired. She started going to the gym 3 times a week, but somehow never broke a sweat. New clothes, new friends, new passwords on her phone. I never confronted her. That's not how I operate. Instead, I took quiet steps, protective ones. I moved our important documents, birth certificates, house deed, my VA paperwork into a rented storage unit on the west side of El Paso. I moved my grandfather's watch, and my mom's wedding ring there too, just in case. I also opened a separate bank account under my name and diverted a portion of my pay each month. Not much, just enough to build a cushion. I didn't want to believe she'd leave me, but I'd spent enough time in uniform to know when something was about to go sideways. The night I left for deployment, Cassandra hugged me at the airport. Stay safe, okay? Her eyes were dry, no emotion, no weight behind the words. That's when I should have known. Silence in the barracks, back in Fallujah. My bunkmate Ramirez looked up from his novel later that evening. You good man? He asked without much pressure. Just some stuff back home, I said. He nodded, said nothing else. Out here, we all knew when to leave things alone. I lay on my cot that night, staring at the ceiling. 11 years together, gone, not even a phone call. And what burned wasn't the betrayal itself, but the cold, calculated way she'd done it. Like she'd planned this. Like I was just collateral damage. The quiet before the storm. 2 weeks later, another hit came. I was eating in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A bank alert. I didn't think much of it until I saw the number. $76,200, gone. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. The joint account we'd built for over a decade emptied in one transfer. I checked the app. Our shared savings now sat at $18.45. I logged into our secondary account. Zeroed out. Transferred to an unfamiliar name. Her name wasn't even listed. She was smarter than that. The turning point. That night, I used the satellite phone at the base communications room to call the bank. The woman on the other end confirmed what I feared. Cassandra had been siphoning funds for weeks. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. The final transfer came just after I deployed. I walked out of that call feeling cold. Not angry. Not broken. Just focused. That's when Ramirez found me in the hallway. Heard you looked like you saw a ghost at dinner, he said. I trusted Ramirez. He'd pulled me out of danger more than once, so I told him the truth. My wife drained our accounts, sent divorce papers by email, moved some guy into our house. He didn't say anything sympathetic, just nodded once. What's your plan? I exhaled slowly. Not sure yet. Quiet moves. That night I opened our home security system remotely. Cassandra probably forgot I could still access it. The cameras flickered to life. There he was, Troy walking my dog, sipping from my Seahawks mug, wearing the sweatshirt I left behind. Laughing with Cassandra in the kitchen, I had remodeled myself, and something in me shifted. Not rage, not grief, something colder. I pulled out my phone and made a list. Call Elliot, my army buddy turned lawyer. Review our VA mortgage paperwork. Check pension access security. File for emergency leave. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was strategy. This was war on my terms. I returned to U.S. soil without telling a soul. Not my unit, not Cassandra, not even my brother. Elliot picked me up from the airport in a borrowed SUV, windows tinted plates out of state. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't need to. He just handed me a coffee and drove toward a cheap motel on the edge of El Paso. The kind of place where no one asks questions as long as you pay in cash. "You look like hell," he finally said. "Feel like it too." We got a booth at a diner on the outskirts of town. Elliot slid a thick manila folder across the table. "Everything you asked for." I opened it slowly. Mortgage documents, transaction records, copies of a refinance application I'd never signed. Except someone had, sort of. The signature was mine, but not really. Middle initial was off. The curve of the L was too sharp, a mimic, but not a match. "She forged it," I said. Elliot nodded. 3 months ago." He pulled out a separate sheet. "Refinanced the house. Pulled out $314,000 using the equity." I stared at the numbers, my stomach folding in on itself. VA loan was in my name only. "Exactly, which makes this not just fraud, federal fraud." I flipped another page. She listed her boyfriend as co-applicant. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You mean Troy Yep?" "Same guy. He's got a record, by the way, 2 DUIs, and a fraud charge from 2020. I leaned back against the booth, the cracked vinyl pressing into my shoulders. "So she forged my name, emptied our accounts, and pulled a loan on my house. All while I was overseas." Elliot's voice dropped. "That's just what we know so far." The game changes. The next morning, I visited the bank where the refinance was processed. I didn't yell. Didn't threaten. I walked in, showed my military ID, my driver's license, and the original signature on both. Then I laid down the forged application. The loan officer's face turned pale. "I need to report this to our fraud unit," he said. "I've already filed a police report," I replied calmly. By sunset, Cassandra knew. She texted me for the first time in months. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Troy said, "Someone's been asking questions." I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the county clerk's office. Filed a notice of contest on the refinance due to forgery. Registered the property under investigation status so no sale or transfer could occur without my physical presence. That same night she called. I let it ring. Voicemail picked up. "Lucas, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing?" "If this is about the divorce, we can still handle it like adults." Those were her words. Like adults. The same phrase from her email in Fallujah. That's when I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. Something deeper. Elliot called the next afternoon. "They froze the refinance funds," he said. "But here's where it gets worse. Some of the money's already gone." "How much?" "About half." I clenched my jaw. "Where did it go?" "They won't say. But one of the account names came up Daniel Knox. Ever heard of him?" "No." Elliot sighed. "He's a local real estate agent. Specializes in cash sales. Flips homes." What was Cassandra doing with a realtor? "That's the thing," he said. "Turns out Knox has done business with Troy before. 3 properties. All sold under market value. All flipped within 6 months." I felt the weight of it settle in. She was planning to sell the house. "Looks that way," Elliot confirmed. "Probably told the agent I was out of the picture. Military absentee. Easy to work around." Everything snapped into place. This wasn't about a bad marriage. This was an operation. Patterns in the smoke. That evening I reviewed our security footage again. Knox's face appeared this time, talking to Troy in the driveway, shaking hands, smiling, like they owned the place. I rewound, watched it again, caught snippets of audio. "Should list by the end of the week. Got a buyer, already cash offer. What about the husband? Don't worry about it. He won't be back for months." That was all I needed. I uploaded the video to cloud storage. Then forwarded it, along with documentation, to a friend of Elliot's, who worked with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. By morning, Agent Keller called me directly. "We've been tracking Daniel Knox and Troy for a while," she said. "Your case may give us the final link." The past echoes. I spent the rest of the week laying low, watching Cassandra from a distance. She'd go to the gym, return home, sometimes alone, sometimes with Troy. They looked comfortable, like none of this had cost them a damn thing. And yet, they'd taken everything from me. Not just money, not just the house, but the years, the trust, the dignity. And that, more than any stolen dollar, was the hardest to swallow. But I didn't spiral. I didn't implode. I made a plan. When betrayal is a blueprint, Elliot and I set up surveillance from the old Ford parked across the street. The plan was simple: wait for Knox to come back. Let him feel safe. Let them all feel like they'd gotten away with it. And then hand everything over. Security footage, bank records, forged documents, emails, phone logs, the whole thread. Let the law do what it does. Let them fall under the weight of their own arrogance. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And for the first time in months, I felt steady. Not whole, but steady. Like a man who knew exactly what was coming next. Sometimes you don't need to kick down the door. You just have to wait long enough for the people inside to trip over the wires they set themselves. That was the phase we were in now. Waiting, planning, watching. The pieces were already on the board. I wasn't there to confront Cassandra. Not anymore. I was there to let her actions and Troy speak for themselves. And they did. Every single day. The setup. It was a Thursday morning when Cassandra messaged me again. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverside Park, noon tomorrow. I didn't reply. I forwarded the message to Elliot. He called me instantly. Do not go, he said. She's spooked. You showing up will only give her room to spin it. Stay quiet. We're almost there. I nodded. Then let's use the time. We devised a simple plan. At 9:30 a.m. the next morning, we parked across the street from the house, my house. At 9:45 a.m., we watched as Cassandra left alone, heading presumably toward Riverside Park. She thought I'd be waiting for her there. Instead, I was waiting here, watching. 10 minutes after she left, a familiar vehicle pulled into the driveway. Daniel Knox. Troy walked out to greet him like they were best friends. They shook hands, then went inside. The final act begins. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. Camera footage came through clearly. Front door, living room, kitchen. They had no idea I still had access to everything. Knox was walking through the house snapping photos. Troy followed close behind, pointing out rooms like he was proud of what he'd stolen. I turned up the volume on the living room feed. We should list at $480, Knox was saying. They'll probably offer $440. Everybody's happy. What about the husband, Troy asked. Knox scoffed. Military guys make noise, but they're too busy or too dumb to fight. He'll take a settlement. I looked over at Elliot. He didn't say a word. He was already recording. The call that changed everything. I sent the live feed to Agent Keller with a 2-word message. Happening now. 27 minutes later, 4 black SUVs rolled up to the house. FBI. We watched from the next block as agents swarmed the driveway. Knox and Troy were led out in handcuffs. Troy looked around like he didn't understand what was happening, like he couldn't believe this was real. I recognized that expression. It's the look of a man who thought he was smarter than the consequences. Fallout, that night, Agent Keller called me. We got it all, she said. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, identity theft, forged documentation. It's airtight. What about Cassandra? There was a pause. She arrived at the scene just after we started the search. She seemed surprised. We're still determining her level of involvement. I stayed quiet. Lucas Keller continued. Did she ever mention financial struggles, pressure to sell? She called us house poor a few times. But our mortgage was affordable. Fixed-rate VA loan. No real urgency. Keller took note. When did those conversations start? 6 or 7 months ago. Around the time she stopped talking to me like a wife. Understood. The question of guilt. It's easy to want to see things in black and white. To paint someone as evil, another as good. But life rarely works that cleanly. The more I thought about it, the more I wondered, did Cassandra know everything? Was she part of the setup from the start? Or did she just fall into it, naive, angry, vulnerable, and convince herself it wasn't that bad? I'll probably never know. But what mattered more was what came next. A choice. A few days later, Elliot met me at the motel. He brought updates. The case is federal now. Knox and Troy are facing major charges. And Cassandra. What about her? She's offered to cooperate. Full restitution. Waive all claim to the house. Withdraw her rights to your pension. In exchange, you don't press criminal charges. I thought about it for a long time. She had lied. She had enabled theft. She had allowed a stranger to live in my house. Drink from my cups, walk my dog, laugh in my kitchen like it was his. But she had also, at some point, been the woman I married. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't her end, but her rock bottom. I want what's mine, I said, nothing more. Elliot nodded. Then we'll make it clean. The last conversation. Cassandra called one more time. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was quiet, measured. I never meant for it to get this far. I didn't know how to fix things. I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't save it. Didn't replay it. Some apologies are too late to matter. Some wounds cut too deep to be closed with words. And for me, the most important part of healing wasn't hearing her say sorry. It was knowing I'd stood up, that I hadn't folded, that I'd drawn a line and said finally, no more, something close to peace. A month later, the divorce was finalized. No fault, no courtroom drama, just clean signatures and split paths. She gave up the house, the pension, and her access to any joint accounts. In return, I withdrew the criminal complaint. Troy and Knox had no such luck. Their case moved forward strong, well-documented, and visible. Keller told me I might be called to testify. I said I'd be ready. I owed it not just to myself, but to every service member who left home thinking things would be okay, and came back to find the ground shifted beneath their feet. It started as my story, my house, my marriage, my loss. But once the FBI took over, once the cameras rolled and the documents were reviewed, it stopped being just mine. What Cassandra and Troy did to me was personal. What Knox and Troy had been doing across 3 states, that was criminal. That was calculated, and I wasn't the only one. The web unfolds. Agent Keller called me a week after the arrests. We've traced at least 11 other cases, she said, all involving military families. Same pattern deployment, sudden refinance house sold under market cash disappears. I sat with that for a long time. 11 families, 11 homes. Each one thinking they were alone in it, each one blindsided. How'd they get away with it for so long, I asked. Keller exhaled. Because the victims were busy serving their country, and because fraud wrapped in domestic complications often gets ignored. She paused, until someone fought back. The role I didn't ask for. I didn't set out to expose a network of exploitation. I just wanted my life back. But justice doesn't always ask for permission. Sometimes it just shows up on your doorstep, hands you a file, and says, "You're the one, let's go." The FBI asked me to sit for an extended deposition. They needed my timeline, my evidence, my mindset. How I discovered the bank withdrawals. When I noticed the forged signature. The exact moment I accessed the security cameras. I answered everything. Calmly, clearly. I laid it all out. Not for vengeance. But because I knew now I wasn't the first. And I sure as hell wasn't going to be the last if we didn't stop them. Stories like mine. Over the next few weeks I met others. A Navy wife from Florida whose husband came home to a sold condo and a mystery loan. A young Marine who'd been evicted from his own house by a girlfriend who filed false paperwork while he was stationed in Okinawa. A National Guard sergeant whose parents had co-signed a home he never got to live in. All of us with the same look in our eyes. Disbelief, followed by quiet rage, followed by resolve. Some of them were angry, some ashamed, some broken, but all of us were done being victims. We wanted answers. We wanted accountability. We wanted our stories to mean something. Cassandra's silence. I never saw Cassandra again. Never even got a final word in person. Elliot handled everything through her lawyer. She signed a full confession regarding the forged signature and agreed to repay what remained of the siphoned funds over time. She forfeited any future claims to my retirement benefits, the house, or other jointly acquired assets. In exchange, I let her walk. No criminal charges. No courtroom spectacle. Just quiet closure. I don't know if she understood how deeply she damaged things. I'm not sure it matters anymore. Some things you don't fix. You outgrow them. You walk away. One letter. About 2 months after the case went public, I received a handwritten envelope in the mail. Return address, Fort Worth, Texas. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short letter from a woman named Elena. Her husband had been deployed with the Navy when their house was nearly stolen in the same scheme. Knox and Troy had targeted her too, but they were stopped just in time because the FBI had already begun unraveling the pattern. And my name had come up as the source. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but your story saved our home. You fought back when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you." I stared at those lines for a long time. Then I pinned the letter to the refrigerator door of my temporary rental. Every morning I'd see it. And remember, sometimes quiet strength changes more than you'll ever know. Closure doesn't come loud. The legal process wrapped up 6 months after Cassandra's email first hit my inbox in Fallujah. Troy took a plea deal, 8 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and identity theft. Daniel Knox fought the charges longer, but eventually broke. He got 12. Both were barred from working in any financial or real estate capacity ever again. The judge called their scheme a targeted attack on those who serve and labeled their behavior cold, opportunistic, and predatory. When the gavel dropped, I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just exhaled, like a man surfacing after months underwater. A new chapter. With the house finally in my name again, I put it on the market. I thought I might live in it. Start over. But standing in the kitchen, remembering the laughter that wasn't mine, the coffee mug in a stranger's hand, the lies soaked into the drywall, I realized I couldn't stay. Too much history, too much betrayal in the walls. I sold the house, used the money to buy a modest cabin near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 2 bedrooms, 8 acres of quiet. There's a creek out back where you can hear the water move even at night. I got a dog German Shepherd, named him Orion. He sleeps near the fireplace and doesn't ask questions, just listens. And sometimes that's all I need, what I learned. I didn't come out of this with more than I started. I didn't get a clean win. I lost a marriage, lost trust, had to rebuild from the ground up. But I came out with something else. Self-respect, clarity. Proof that you can stand up without screaming and still be heard. Proof that walking away with your head held high is sometimes the loudest thing you can do. A year passed. Not quickly, not gently, but it passed. And for the first time in over a decade, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Wasn't checking bank apps for suspicious withdrawals. Wasn't listening for footsteps in a hallway I didn't recognize. I was living, simply, quietly. My place in Coeur d'Alene wasn't much to look at from the road. Tin roof, old siding, faded porch steps. The land stretched wide and clean. 8 acres of tall pine, a winding creek. Morning coffee in the cool air. The crunch of Orion's paws on dry leaves. The echo of my own breath after a long hike with no words exchanged. I fixed the roof that first February. Repaired the tool shed after a storm in February. Sanded the porch railing down to raw wood just to feel like I was doing something real again. Something no one could take from me. Retirement. After 20 years in uniform, I filed for early retirement. I'd given the Army my loyalty, my sweat, my spine. I'd earned every stripe, every deployment ribbon, every line on my hands. But it was time. Not because I was bitter, but because I was ready to live for something else. I took a small carpentry job in town. Nothing complicated, just helping locals with fences, cabins repairs. Most days, it was just me, my tools, and the radio humming through a cracked speaker. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I was just building. And that was enough. The ghost of her, sometimes I wondered where Cassandra ended up. Elliot heard through a mutual contact that she moved back to Oregon, working at a dental clinic again. No criminal record, no online trail. She disappeared in a way, which was fine. I didn't hate her anymore. Didn't miss her either. She was a chapter I'd finished, one I'd underlined for the pain, then closed for good. There's power in that, learning how to hold your own past without letting it cut you open every time. Letters. Every once in a while I'd get a letter from someone who'd heard the story. Another soldier, another spouse, a friend of a friend who had been through something similar but didn't know how to name it. They'd write things like, "You put into words what I couldn't say. Your story made me realize I wasn't weak, just betrayed. Thank you for not staying silent." I kept them all in a wooden box beside the fireplace. Didn't read them every day. But on the hard ones, when the silence got too heavy or the night too long, I'd open that box. Just to remind myself something good came out of all of this. Something that couldn't be stolen or forged. The unexpected visit. Late one spring afternoon, I heard a knock on the cabin door. I opened it to find a young woman in jeans and a windbreaker holding a clipboard and a folded paper. She smiled nervously. "Are you Lucas?" "Yeah." She handed me a paper from the Department of Veterans Affairs, routine pension verification. We talked for a few minutes. As she turned to leave, she paused. "You're the one with the house fraud case, right? From the news last year." I nodded, guarded. She hesitated. "My uncle's a Marine. Almost lost his place in San Diego in something similar. Just thank you for what you did. People notice." Then she left. Just like that. No big moment. No fanfare. Just acknowledgement. And sometimes that's all you need to feel seen again. Letting go. There's no perfect ending to a story like this. I didn't get my years back. Didn't get a heartfelt apology. Didn't ride off into the sunset with everything fixed. But I got something better. Clarity. Dignity. Space to breathe. I learned that some battles aren't about winning. They're about not letting the worst thing that happened to you become the thing that defines you. Final entry. One night after cleaning up the workshop, I sat out on the porch. Sky turning purple. Creek whispering in the background. Orion sleeping at my feet. I pulled out one of the letters from the box. It was the first one Elena had sent the woman from Fort Worth, whose home was saved because of the case I pushed forward. I read it again slowly. You fought back when it would have been easier to walk away. That line stayed with me. Because she was right. I could have walked away. Could have let it all rot. But instead I stayed in the fight, not with fists or fury, but with facts, with patience, with strength quiet enough to make the walls shake. And in the end, that was the kind of man I wanted to be. Not bitter, not broken, but built from truth.